first item of business is a roll call vote of all of the Board of Selectmen. So I, Robin Hunter, present.
Bob Springett, present.
John Jeffries here.
Whoa.
Okay. The first item of business is citizens' comments. Does anybody attending the meeting have any comments? Chris, did you receive any comments via email?
No, we don't receive any.
Okay, all right. So having no comments, we will go to item 1.1, which I'm going to turn over to you, Chris, and that is the overview of the 2024 operating budgets for the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Robin. And just bear with me, I'm hosting the meeting, letting people in, and I'll bring up my presentation as well. So as is tradition each year, I give the board a preview of the upcoming budget and financial picture as we start the budget process for the year. As is customary, I have a very short presentation to give you. Before I jump into that, in your packet, you've got a handful of materials related to the budget process. The first is the full suite of budget submissions from each department. Also in that is a summary budget model that includes all of the revenue and expenditure accounts to give you an overall big picture of what we're looking at. And then I've also this year, for the first year, have included the reserve policies that the community has voted on, since those guide our decision-making process as we set the budget. So let me jump in here and start the presentation. Okay. How's that?
Loading. John's IT director may be correct.
She is seldom wrong. She reminds me of that often.
You seen anything other than the click the exit screen?
That's all we see, but when you exit, we see the presentation.
That's interesting. So when I go to share it as a presentation, let me try one last time. Yeah, for some reason that's can you make this out, or
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
work?
Yeah.
You can make it out? Okay. All right. It looks small on my screen. All right. Well, sorry about that. So the first slide as part of the presentation this evening is just a look back on the prior fiscal year. So FY22. These numbers that I'm about to, or that I'm showing you right now, are just estimates. Our books have not been officially closed yet, and our free cash has not yet been certified. We've got a target date for our finance team of the first week of January to get everything wrapped up. So we should be seeing a free cash number about 2 weeks after that. So two main components make up our free cash calculation. The first is expenditures or operating budgets that were not fully spent. And the other is revenues that exceeded our estimates when we set the budget. So overall, we're in a good shape in terms of what our free cash looks like. I know that there were some concerns in years past about the amount of free cash that was being turned back, and the numbers this year and the numbers last year have shown that we've started to tighten that up. which is just indicative of stronger budgeting, I would say. So on the expenditure side here, you see the salaries and expenses and the overall turnbacks for our general areas of government. So for instance, $178,000 in general government, all the way down to unclassified at $615,000. The big number in the education, the 1.3 million, as you all know, that's the circuit breaker reimbursement. So our total turnbacks on the expense side are approximately $2.7 million, or 3% of our operating budget. I've got the DOR excerpt here that says, under sound financial policies, a community strives to generate between 3 to 5% of its annual budget in free cash, and we come in at 3%. On the revenue side, I've just broken down what we originally budgeted in FY21 when we were setting the 22 budget, and what our actual receipts or revenue came in at. So you see motor vehicle excise, we budgeted at 1.2, came in at 1.5. Licenses and permits, rentals, and penalties and interest. These are the largest categories of our local receipts. So those two numbers give us an approximation at this point of what our overall free cash number will be. This is also important, as free cash plays a big role in how the town budgets and is an important revenue source for the town for its budget each year. Shifting gears to what we're looking
So
at.
Chris,
Yep.
when we go back, maybe I think you're going to address it. When we go back to the revenues,
Yep.
do we know what the actual new growth was versus the budget?
Yes. So our new growth came in approximately $318,000, and the assessors typically provides their guidance of budgeting $125,000. And we're carrying that same $125,000 as an estimated new growth for next year. So overall, big picture for 24 with all the budgets submitted so far. At the top of the left-hand side of the screen is just a breakdown of our major revenue sources. Our automatic 2.5% increase to the levy that we're allotted is just shy of $1 million. As I had just mentioned, the assessors have provided us with a recommendation of targeting new growth at $125,000. Our state aid at an estimated 2% increase is $1.3 million. This number is not set yet. It'll be set sometime around January, February. And our local receipts we're estimating to come in at $2.2 million.
And the local receipts are mainly it's
So local-
primarily the motor vehicle excise tax, right?
Yep, motor vehicle excise tax, rentals from the cell tower, for instance, license and permit fees from permit applications and inspections, rentals, things of that nature. Those.
I mean, the only thing I wouldn't mind going back to the assessors and asking them to relook at this new growth. It was substantially higher, the actual.
Yeah.
So I don't, was there something unique about the actuals for 2023? Or was it 2022? I'm always confused by the fiscal year.
Yeah,
That made it that much higher. And
Well, didn't we have a favorable environment for growth and interest rates and things like that, market values? I mean, going into this cycle, it looks like we're going to be not quite
Constricted.
as favorable for that. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
and you would expect for next year you'd be constricting.
So
I'm
that's
sorry,
that's
Jim,
a
you were
line
breaking
of-
up a little bit.
Yeah, Bob, what I said is that's true. You had very low interest rates. You had a period of very massive expansion over the past couple of years, and you've had increases in all the categories that affect the new growth, that affect new growth. the opposite of that will be true for FY24.
Yeah.
All the factors will be slowing, and that's been telegraphed to us by the Federal Reserve. So,
yeah. Most recently, the stock market didn't do very well the last day or so.
yeah.
So maybe the question should, Robin, maybe we should just have Chris talk to the assessors and understand their rationale.
Right. I mean, if that's, it makes perfect sense. It's just.
So it's pretty customary to carry a conservative new growth estimate.
Okay.
Your actual new growth, once it's certified by the state, is what's incorporated into the ultimate tax rate that's being set. But as you're looking at kind of what you're anticipating FY24 budget to shape out to be, it's pretty customary to come in with a lower new growth number.
Okay.
All right. And so over on the right-hand side of the screen, I've just got the year-over-year operating budget. So we're looking at approximately a 4% increase at this point. Our overall expenditures, operating and capital, are a little bit over $47 million. Our anticipated revenues at this state are a little bit over $48 million, which leaves us with an unused levy capacity of approximately $300,000. I have an asterisk next to that because that number is not necessarily accurate, and I'll explain later on what I mean by that. One of the things that I'd ask the board and others to keep in mind at this early stage of the budget process is that a lot of our assessments have not yet come in. So we don't know what our school assessment is going to be. We don't know what our retirement assessment is going to be, or a health insurance or property insurance, general liability. So each year we target the estimates that you see on the lower left-hand side of your screen: 5% for schools, retirement, general liability, and 7% for health insurance. In years past, those have typically been high, and they have typically come in lower, which ultimately lowers our overall operating budget.
Right, and keep in mind, this is a negotiation year for the school, so.
Yeah.
That throws a little bit of a unknown into the budget increases.
Yeah. All right. On the next slide, I've just called out a few of the more significant operating budget requests. These are new requests for new staff or new programming. These are within the full operating budget that's in your packet and that has been sent to you, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the major ones here. The first is the Selectmen's budget has been level funded, with the exception of a set-aside amount that we've included in the salary line for police collective bargaining negotiations. We just started negotiations with the Police Association last week with Selectman Jeffries. As we do each year when we have an open contract, we put a set-aside amount that we anticipate that we're likely to settle to. In the off chance that the contract is not settled by the time the budget is set and passed at town meeting. Should we come to terms before the budget's set and we head to town meeting, those costs will be removed from the Selectmen's budget and put into the police department's budget where they should be. On the data processing IT side of things, we are anticipating an expanded contract with Retrofit. That expanded contract is just to continue the IT help desk technician services that we currently have employed with them. That is the 24/7 remote help desk services, as well as having an on-site technician in the building 1 day a week. The planning board has a handful of consulting or a handful of initiatives that they're continuing to pursue next year around tree preservation, the village center work, and natural resource protective zoning efforts. So they've included some consulting costs to cover those efforts.
Chris, just a quick question. On data processing, is there an offset? Because to that because we had an open rec for a long time and we decided to use retrofit to fill that gap. Is that just part of that contract?
So there is, so there is an offset. We essentially have a $65,000. We budget $65,000 for that open position that is included in the budget.
Okay.
Should that go unfilled, yes, that would be a delta of about $40,000 in savings.
Okay. And I guess it's same for the planning board, right? They had a full-time land use planner, and so there's an offset on that side as well.
I'd have to go back to calculate out what our current interim planner is making versus the land use director. I'm not quite clear on that.
Okay, thanks.
May I speak? This is Carol Lisbon.
You may.
Thank you. The answer is no. The kind of work that we need to do on a tree preservation bylaw, the village center, the NRPZ, and in fact, a fourth issue is a totally zoning diagnostic, because our zoning bylaws are woefully out of date. Can't really be done by a town planner. It needs to be done by consultants coming in that are specialized in this. The town planner will obviously help and support and contribute, but we need consulting services to do this.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next up, the fire department for our EMTs are looking to increase the weekday stipend to help promote regular coverage for the shift schedules. The chief has expressed to me that they continue to struggle with having the minimum coverage required. And they're hoping that by increasing the stipend that our EMTs receive, it'll help promote and encourage these folks to sign up for the weekday schedule, which is the one that's been difficult for them to fill. We still have emergency services available to us by way of mutual aid should a call go out, but the chief would like to ensure that we have our appropriate minimum staffing levels 24/7. The building inspector is looking to hire a new a part-time deputy assistant building commissioner to help support the efforts in the building department. We have a very lightly staffed building department with just one building commissioner and one administrative assistant. This position would be very helpful in helping with the continued increase of permits that the town has seen over the past few years, as well as support and encourage succession planning within that office. Building commissioners are notoriously difficult to find. We have a very good one. He's been with us for a long time, but he certainly has retirement in mind at some point. And so it would be good to be able to develop this position out both for the short-term benefit of the community as well as long-term benefit. And lastly, highway is looking to bring on 3 new positions. 2 of these technically aren't new positions, so I'll just go in order. And I will pause before I continue and say that the Board of Selectmen departments will come before the board to talk about their personnel / succession planning efforts. And Kevin will be before you sometime in January to talk about this particular request. But the first is to bring back the working foreman, which Bobby Tosi used to fill before he was promoted into the operations superintendent position. This is to allow there to be a working foreman out in the field, and it'll allow Bobby to spend less time in the field and more time in the office working on a lot of our strategic initiatives around bridge replacement, Claybrook Road, our culverts, and a lot of our other infrastructure efforts. Looking to bring on a full-time master mechanic. We currently contract this position out, but looking to bring this on as a full-time position. I do know that the individual that we contract this out to is interested in the full-time position role. I will say that there is an offset to this position. A portion of the salary is paid out of the snow and ice budget. And lastly, a new position would be a business analyst. This position would be to fill any vacancy left by retiring administrative staff, should that occur in the next 18 months. And the idea is that should that occur, it would change this position. It would continue to be administrative in nature, but it would allow there to be a focus on procurement, contracting, and other type of administrative work. I will also say that in speaking with Kevin, the thought is that these positions put the DPW department on solid footing for when the Park and Rec, cemetery, and building maintenance departments finally and officially shift over underneath the DPW umbrella. All right, just a high-level capital summary broken down on the left-hand side of the screen by our major departments. Overall, we're looking at right now approximately $3.7 million in capital requests. We currently only have $1.8 million in dedicated funding sources per the town's policy. That's the 1.5% levy contribution, as well as that $1.2 million free cash contribution that was outlined in the town's reserve policies. That leaves a delta of approximately $1.8 million to be, to be figured out. So, we'll see as the capital budget committee deliberates as to, what they're proposing to put forward. I'll come back to the capital budget, the delta there at the end, as we talk about policy decisions and things for the board and others to be aware of. But before I do so, just a quick snapshot of the reserve policy implementation and free cash. As we did last year, there was free cash that went to a handful of identified priorities that were identified by the community, the board, the warrant committee, the capital budget committee. These are the figures that were within that multi-year plan for FY24. Those free cash numbers that I showed you at the beginning give us a projected free cash balance of just shy of $11 million for the fiscal year. And with our anticipated appropriations listed out here at $4 million, leaves us with about $6-7 million in free cash balance. And last, I just wanted to return back to that capital piece. At this stage, I view that as kind of the biggest question at this point and the impact on the budget. If you recall the first slide when I said that, or the second slide when I said that we're looking at about $300,000 in unused levy capacity, that is because I am carrying that full capital budget request of over $3 million in the budget as if the full amount were to be funded on the levy. So should that $1.8 million difference between the funding source and capital and the requests not materialize, well, that $1.8 million is not raised on the levy and adds to your unused levy capacity. There's also the question about how we can leverage debt service to help pay for some of the larger projects within that capital request. We've got the Claybrook road repair in there. We've got a fire engine request from the fire department. And there's an opportunity for us to look at even short-term debt as a way to be able to spread that cost over multi-years and reduce the overall impact to the budget. So that is something that I've asked the finance team to think about, just to be able to come back and present to you later in the year some funding opportunities and scenarios as a way to help inform the capital budget committee as they continue to deliberate, make their recommendations throughout the year. So that's it. All in all, in pretty good shape. There's certainly a couple of policy decisions for folks to make, but things are in a very good place at this early stage of the game. I won't be here in March, but I suspect Carl will likely come back and provide you with a budget update at that time once a lot of these assessments and other numbers are finalized.
Right, and
Just
just
cell phone number.
just to remind people of the process, this is just the first pass, and especially when it comes to capital budget, Capital Budget Committee has already begun to vet the requests that have been submitted. And the warrant committee will begin to set up also meetings with all of the various departments to review the budget. So the budget will change over time, and Carl will keep us updated of those changes as they transpire.
Chris, the 160,000 on slide 6 for the selectmen's budget, what is that for?
Slide 6, let me just bring it back up.
Yeah. It just, it's 160,000 in the selectmen's
Oh yeah, on the capital.
capital.
Yeah, so that's a handful of small building maintenance requests, things that are primarily put forward by Carl Warnick as recurring upkeep. I can bring up the detail if you'd like, but that's what encompasses that 160,000.
No, you don't have to do it now. It'd be nice for just for the future, so we have it. So when we see it, when it's our turn, just to review the various departmental budgets, we'll have it and can refer back to it.
Yep.
So Chris, I do like the department narratives. I went through them. I don't know if that's a new thing or it's something I'm just seeing for the first time, but sort of did give a real feel for each department and what was going on. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, good. That's something that's been, that's been happening for some time. It's kind of been, it's ebbed and flowed, but we've emphasized that as to as much as possible with departments to include those with their submissions. All right.
Yeah, Bob, if you wanted to see where that 160,000 is, it's item 164 on page 132, halfway down on the right-hand side.
I'll wait till I get the summary presentation of capital.
Use those glasses that you put on when you write a check.
I gave them up with the green eye, sleeves. I don't do that stuff anymore. The eye shades and the,
Are there any more questions or comments for Chris?
Obviously this is very preliminary, right? So it's nice to have a view. It's nice to identify areas that we need may have to make policy decisions, but obviously this is going to roll out over the next couple of months. I appreciate the overview for sure, and hopefully it helps set the stage for the financial department's work going forward. And I do echo John's comment. We'll just make sure we have your number.
I'll be available for public comment if I'm called.
Oh, well, good, because we usually don't get any. All right, so if there's no more items, then why don't we go to item 1.2, which is the 2023 annual town meeting warrant article and look ahead. And as most people know, the warrant opened. And so this is just a tabulation of where we stand right now, correct, Chris?
That's it. Yep. The warrant's still open. People can still submit articles, but leading up to the deadline, we've provided the board with just periodic updates of what we're looking at this point. So I think you can see this.
We can. This
Excellent.
one works.
Perfect. All right, so up here at the top of the screen is all just your usual run-of-the-mill articles that I won't go into. I will just highlight the kind of new one-off type of articles that we're anticipating. So I do know that in speaking with the planning board chair, there are likely a handful of articles to come from them. I'm waiting on a list from them. I understand that they have a meeting, I think, early next week to finalize that. So I put a couple of holds in here. I have continued to carry over the ADU accessory apartments as well as the floodplain overlay, which needs to be done at this coming year's annual town meeting. But I anticipate there'll be some additional planning board articles that come from the board next week. Next up, we've got a few bylaw amendments that are being requested. So the first is a request from the building inspector to create some consistency amongst how his inspectors are appointed. So the building commissioner currently appoints the gas and plumbing inspectors. But the board currently appoints just the wiring inspector. So not sure why that was, could just be a product of history. But Walter is recommending that as the board looks to modernize their bylaws and certain positions and committees, that you could have the building commissioner also appoint the electrical wire inspector along with his other inspector appointments. The town clerk has asked that we put this forward to amend the terms of office for constables so that they are staggered as opposed to all coming up at once. Staggering the terms will help ensure that she's not scrambling to make appointments and fill those positions all at once every 3 years. The next two are just follow-up from prior votes of the Board of Selectmen, as we in the board periodically last year looked at some of the committees that have been inactive for a very, very long time. We have kept a list of those, and where they are codified in the bylaw, it needs to be an actual official change at town meeting. So the first is to eliminate the Finance Committee on Roads, which has been inactive for, I think, over at least 10 or 15 years. The board previously took a vote indicating their interest in moving that forward a few months back. So this would be the article to do that. And the second would be the Tree Committee as well. I know that the one remaining member who was in the past on the Tree Committee has had a few conversations with Kevin, has indicated that that made a lot of sense to kind of part ways with that committee, given again the difficulty in the past of keeping that committee filled. Coming from the finance department, looking at potentially increasing the demand fees for unpaid tax bills. And then lastly, we have received interest from a citizen for a citizen petition to install sidewalks on Cross Street to connect Chickering School with the, I believe it's the Precious Blood Daycare Center, right down the street there. So that's what we're looking at this place at this point in time. I will say there is another article that I need to add to this list, and that is from the Capital Budget Committee, who last week took a vote expressing their interest in amending their bylaw, in particular to eliminate the appointment of the long range planning committee member on the Capital Budget Committee and changing that to be an at-large committee member. Given that the long range planning committee has been inactive for a few years, the Capital Budget Committee has expressed interest in changing that so that they can have an additional member of the committee on board. So that's what we're looking at. We'll have this on the board's agenda for January 5th when you meet next with the capital budget update, as well as any other updates that we have. And I believe this will be before you one last time before the actual deadline for on the warrant closes.
Chris,
When's the deadline?
I believe it's January 13th.
Thank you.
Chris, what about Valerie Lynn's tree preservation?
If there's anything related to tree preservation, that'll likely come from the planning board, which I anticipate hearing from them next week after their meeting.
And it could potentially be one of the hold line items, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Bob, I know there was some sort of a process that was undergoing with respect to vetting of warrant articles.
Yes, there was. There was a great deal of talk and interest in making sure that proponents of warrant articles took the extra step of ensuring that they engaged with the public to make so that we can get a sense of public interest in items that may, require more time at town meeting. That was sort of the thrust of that, and I think that was going to be included in the write-up that we send to people when this was talked about. So, Chris, I'm not sure where we are with it, but that was the general push, was to make sure there was much more engagement on items.
Yeah, so the guidance that the narrative that went out about the opening and closing dates of the warrant included the board's desire to encourage petitioners who are submitting articles to go through a robust public engagement and presentation process so that the residents and town meeting members were as educated and as aware of the warrant articles well in advance of town meeting. I think that's, something that we can continue to, or the board could continue to convey to these folks to the petitioners, as the warrant actually shapes out. Another opportunity for that is to, encourage, one thing that the board could consider is having the petitioners come before the board at some point before open hearing, to have in the moderators meeting, to have a presentation from the petitioners about what the actual articles are to help encourage that kind of educational component.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that I think Robin made the suggestion last time that we talked about this, and it was a practice in town when I first moved, was to have people explain the impact of the particular warrants and have those available for viewing, whether on YouTube or it used to be done on Dover TV. So there may be other opportunities to help provide information sources to the town to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to access the information and understand what the implications are for the various warrant articles. I think that might be something. I think, Robin, I think you did talk about that a year or so ago. I think that's something that we should take a hard look at.
Yeah, we certainly can do that. Is it something you want to try and implement for this town meeting cycle?
Sure, why not? If we can find a couple of, if we can identify ones that we collectively think require that kind of a attempt to educate, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
And that way we could do a little trial balloon and see.
Right. I mean, we're certainly going to need to do things for the special town meeting on June 4th.
Yep. Yep. But some of this other stuff.
And I think, we should coordinate also, maybe talk to the planning board, because there are statutory requirements for them to have open hearings, but maybe there are a few other things that they can do to try and I'm sure Carol's thought of this already, just to figure out how best to educate people prior to town meeting.
We could use planning board as a trial balloon. That'd be okay. See how it goes, if Carol's willing.
If I may?
Sure.
You may.
Sure, thank you. So we started the process actually this past Saturday on December 10th, when we had over 25 citizens join us for a 3.5-hour Village Center Initiative discussion, which was absolutely awesome. Probably the best meeting I've ever seen. It was absolutely great. We are going to be discussing a calendar at Monday's meeting, which include, and we have committed on the calendar a January 24th meeting with the Council on Aging. One of their morning type activities to present the Village Center Initiative and to get their feedback on that. And we're planning on an open hearing that's required statutory on March 20th and also on April 3rd. So that's where we are right now. And our expectation is that we would have the opportunities in January, February, and early March to meet with other groups other than just the COA. And we're working on reaching out to like the DMA and some other obvious, groups of folks that we can target. Jim.
Yeah, thank you. Carol, I'm sure you've already started working on this, but I just wanted to float it for everybody else to consider as well, if people are watching and they're going to be considering other warrant articles. Where the warrant article might have an impact on property rights, I think it's particularly important to try to contact the people who might be adversely affected by the warrant article. And in that regard, I'm wondering, I don't know, I haven't seen any substance yet, so maybe you could explain whether the floodplain bylaw change that you're considering or the accessory apartment bylaw change that you're considering might have an impact on individual property rights.
Robin, may I respond?
You may.
So floodplain first. The floodplain bylaw is mandated by the state. Should we not approve the floodplain bylaw changes, then those folks in Dover who live within the floodplain as identified by FEMA will not be able to get insurance. So we have a representative from the State Department responsible for floodplains coming in on our January 9th meeting to make sure that we understand exactly what the changes are. But this is if ever there seemed to be a slam dunk, this is the one, because either you get insurance or you don't. But I certainly appreciate your point, Jim. It's a good one. Relative to the ADU bylaw, I don't see it impacting property rights at all. I think the property right issue is certainly one that the tree preservation subcommittee will be looking at, as we saw with the Concom discussion last year on moving that line. But I don't expect to bring a tree preservation bylaw to town meeting in 2023.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And Carol, what about the accessory apartment? I know in the past, sometimes that has been somewhat controversial over the past 30 years or so. Is there anything we should be worried about there in terms of reaching out to people?
We are going to be reaching out a lot. Certainly the Council on Aging is a population that has expressed interest in staying in Dover. One way to stay in Dover is to allow ADUs so that they can either get rental income, or they can move into an ADU and rent out their main house, or have a caregiver come into an ADU so they don't have to move into an assisted living facility. It goes on and on and on. So we'll be discussing that as well.
Great. Well, thank you for all your work, Carol. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we can move along to item 1.3, which is to approve the employment agreement between Dover and Carl Valente for interim town administration services. And boy, Chris, you have a busy night. You're up again.
Thanks. So our Carl Valente, our interim or acting finance director, former interim town administrator, has so generously agreed to assume the interim town administrator position once again upon my departure. I worked with Carl to put together this contract, which mirrors the agreement that you had with Carl 4 years ago when he served in this capacity. I will say one of the changes is we have kept his hourly rate the same for his hourly rate that he's currently making as our acting finance director. We've carried over to the interim town administrator agreement. But other than that, the language is all the same, has been vetted and okayed by Labor Council. And I'd ask for the board's consideration and potential vote this evening.
I appreciate you pulling this together so quickly. I don't have any comments. Bob or John, do you?
No, I went through it. It's pretty straightforward.
Right. So then I move to approve the employment agreement between the town of Dover, Massachusetts and Carl F. Valente.
Second,
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springer.
Sorry.
Muted, John.
John Jeffries.
Thank you, John. All right, and moving along to item 1.4, which is, oh, Chris, you gave it to me.
I did. You can pass it back if you want.
Oh, that's okay. This is the appointment of Mark Wahlberg and Carl Valente as delegates to the West Suburban Health Group.
Waldeman. Mark Wahlberg is currently shooting a movie on location, but I'm sure he'd be happy to step in for.
Oh, right, it's Waldman, sorry. Thank you, John. So due to the resignations of the town treasurer, collector, Jerry Lane, and the upcoming resignation of our town administrator, Chris Dwelly, the positions of Dover's primary delegate and alternative member to West Suburban Health Group will be vacant. As you know, our healthcare benefits are provided through West Suburban Health Group, and typically two of our town employees, the treasurer and the town administrator, we appoint as our delegates. So since neither will be here, we will need to appoint the interim treasurer collector, Mark Waldman, who will replace Chris as the primary delegate, and the interim town administrator, Carl Valente, who will replace Jerry Lane as the primary delegate. And the reason we need, well, we already talked about why we need to do that. So are there any questions?
No.
Okay, then I move to approve the appointment of Mark Waldman and Carl Valente as the Dover's primary delegates and alternative members respectively to the West Suburban Health Group.
Second,
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springer.
I, John Jeffries.
All right. And then the next item also pertains to, which is item 1.5, to the West Suburban Health Group. And this is the disclosure of financial interest and a potential vote. And I'm going to hand this back over to Chris.
Thanks, Robin. Well, now that Mark Waldman has been appointed as a delegate to the West Suburban Health Group, he must file a disclosure of financial interest as a retiree from the town of Wellesley. Mark receives his health insurance through the community in which he retired, which is also a member of West Suburban. So the decisions that he makes as a delegate for the town of Dover, directly impact his personal financial situation. This is a typical disclosure that we have to file every year. The past 3 years, you have filed one for myself and for Jerry Lane.
Robin, it's very straightforward. I don't think there would be any questions. So I'll be happy to move to approve pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 26(8)A, Section 19. I got to move you out of the way to see the rest of it. The exemption of Mark Wellman, interest in serving on the Board of Directors and/or Steering Committee of the West Suburban Health Group, as his interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from the employee.
I'll second that. All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springer.
I, John Jeffries.
Okay. And in case people were wondering why we don't have to do this for our interim town administrator, it's because he does not receive his health care from West Suburban. So the next item on the agenda is regarding the Board of Selectmen membership size study committee. And it was supposed to be a nomination. During the week, there have been some questions that we've received regarding process, since a discussion regarding the process for selection of members of this committee is not part of the agenda this evening, I would suggest that we defer this item and have as an agenda item for our next meeting, a discussion on the process.
Is that a motion?
If we
You
need
don't need
one,
to.
yes. Chris?
Chris, do we need one?
If you'd like to remove an item from an agenda, yeah, you should make a motion and take a vote.
Okay, then that was a motion.
Second,
So all in favor, I, Robin Hunter.
hi, Bob Springett.
John Jeffries.
Okay, thank you. Then the next item of business, oh my God, Chris, we are not letting you off lightly.
We
is
gotta
item
get our
1.1.
money's worth. We gotta get our money's worth out of this guy.
Mona, good job. The next item of business is the vote to approve the license agreement between the town of Dover and Dover Automotive for use of a portion of 5 Whiting Road.
Thanks, Robin. So over the summer, as conversations continued and the focus of the community center building came to light regarding the budget, the board entered into an extended lease agreement with Dover Automotive and Doug Wolf for a 6-month period at that time, not knowing where we would end up. Given that we've seen a new updated construction schedule based on our June 3rd special town meeting, and speaking with Dover Automotive, who's interested in continuing to operate out of Whiting Road, we're proposing that the board consider continuing his lease agreement for another 6 months until the end of the fiscal year.
So till June 30th.
Correct.
Right. So that seems straightforward to me. So I move to approve the license agreement between the town of Dover and Dover Automotive for the use of a portion of 5 Whiting Road effective January 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2023 with no change in terms.
Second,
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
hi, Bob Springett.
John Jeffries.
Okay, great. And the next item on our agenda, did you make Bob do this, Chris? No, it's Phil. All right.
Well, I don't think I think Phil can't make it tonight. So I'm not sure who's gonna, maybe it's John or Deborah, I don't
see
know.
Deborah here and I see John Richardson. So John,
Yeah, I'm
what
prepared
are
to
you gonna
speak
present?
for Colliers and Fenwick McCready, and Deborah will fill in if I.
Okay, all right. So just for everybody in the audience, this is regarding the fee proposal for Fenwick and McCready in connection with the community center. I'll turn it over to you, John.
Right, so I think Phil, your OPM, Phil Palumbo of Colliers has already submitted our fee proposal in written form and expressed, I hope, his support for that. He did review it carefully with me. We broke down over the hours the basis of building that up. It covers both us and our consultants. We have our structural consultant, our civil engineer, our landscape architect, our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection consultant, as well as our spec writer, will all need to look at their work. We based this on the 17 items that were discussed at our previous meetings with the Board of Selectmen, and we're prepared to pursue those 17 items plus anything else that is identified, provided we can do it within the time frame of releasing documents to the bidders on March 1st. That's our paramount goal is to have bid documents to the pre-qualified bidders at that time, so we can keep the schedule that we Fenwick McCready and Colliers have promised to you, the Board of Selectmen.
And Bob, I know that you had a preliminary meeting about process with the building committee.
Well, I had a meeting with, this week with Ford and with Phil to make sure that what we had discussed in November and what was included in John and Deb and work, that we were all in sync, and we had a very positive meeting. And I think I think everybody's pretty much on the same page. So I'm pretty happy with it. And I think Ford had I just think it was a good meeting. It was a good, productive meeting.
So then as basically the Board of Selectmen's champion of this effort, do you have any comments or concerns regarding the compensation and the scope of work under this contract?
I think it's, I can't go to the actual hours. I don't know that end of it, but I
Right.
do know that it was scrutinized quite carefully, and Phil was quite supportive of the effort that went into it, and in the bid, he thinks it's fair. So I have absolutely no reason not to trust the guy's judgment. And as I said, the meeting was fine. It was thorough, and I'm comfortable with the proposal.
Okay, and I think everybody understands the timing and what needs to get done. And I think we emphasized at our last meeting that if there are hiccups along the way, to make sure that they are communicated as a team so that we can resolve issues quickly, because time is really of the essence. And we're all committed to bringing a quality proposal to the town at the June 4th town meeting.
So I'll second that, Robin, because it really is tight. Phil made that comment several times. A lot of work has to get done in a fairly condensed period of time. So we'll keep a really close eye on the schedule.
Right.
Everybody has the same goals. Everybody has the same aim. Everybody has the same schedule. So
Oh, I'm glad I'm not in charge.
Well, John's going to have to, just get a sleeping bag in his office and, go 24/7 for a while.
Yeah,
John,
we are ready to start immediately, and we've tentatively scheduled meetings with our consultants for beginning of next week. Obviously, with the Christmas holidays coming up, that's
No holidays, no holidays.
it's a little bit of a challenge, I know, and for me, I haven't done anything for the holidays yet, so I keep looking at my calendar and just shake my head. John, Jeffrey,
There is that duty-free spot in all those airports you've been visiting.
Yeah, well, I try and fit 10 days of clothing in a carry-on bag, and you'll see how little space you have. John, do you have any comments?
Nothing. Get
All
busy,
right.
John.
All right, so then I move to approve the Fenwick McCready architectural fee proposal for rebidding the community center building project dated December 5th, 2022. Do I have
Second.
all in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Okay, perfect.
Excuse me, Robin, if I could just ask, I'm not sure without Phil here what the process is, and Chris, maybe you can weigh in, but we would really appreciate a formal notice to proceed in writing, just because we have to execute contract amendments with our subconsultants.
Yeah, so part of that, that will be provided when we send over the signed contract back to you guys tomorrow.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I think what Chris needed was our approval in order to get that back to you. So
And John, or Bob, the contract's for how long? What's the duration of the contract?
It's in the documents.
it's basically to get the work, the duration of the work.
Does the duration specifically, I'm looking, I'm on page 2 of your document, John, or
Right.
page, it doesn't say specifically if the duration lines up with the dates that we need.
Timeline.
The reason I asked this is I was really insulted by Phil's comments last week or 2 weeks ago, where he described delays as being items that were out of the ordinary, or there was some term that he used that I was basically offended by, and I don't want that to be the case. I specifically don't want to hear it ever again. So I want there to be a date that lines up with the dates we need.
Right, so I totally understand that. Our proposal is based on the schedule that Collier's put together, and it aligns around support for June 3rd town meeting. But this is an additional service. We have a contract. We may have to do an amendment. We had a contract for construction administration that ran through construction administration, but that has been put on hold since obviously we're not in construction.
So this,
Again, that doesn't answer the question specifically, because Bob Springett brought up numerous times how delays, the number of various delays that happen in the spring and in the summer, or I'm sorry, in the spring of last year, led to delays this year.
So if you look at,
So John, the FMA has provided the calendar of events.
it's on page 236, right?
That line up around all the bidding deadlines and all the important deadlines that we need to provide. So we'll make sure that that gets folded into the contract amendment, and that becomes part of all the legal documents that we're all working toward.
So that's just page 1, Chris, you're referring to.
I'm referring to page 1, yep, with the date from Fenwick McCready, yep, that lists out all the particular dates, which again marry with the OPM and the dates needed to get us to that June special town
What
meeting.
happens if they fail to deliver on those dates?
Well, those are terms that we can discuss with Phil.
there is also an exhibit B, part of the document.
Yeah,
that-
page 238,
That was
236.
Collier's schedule.
Right.
But that's what John's wanting to make sure that that lines up, right?
Right.
Right. Right.
So I think Chris's suggestion of making sure that that just gets folded into the amendment or the contract makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
John,
I think Phil will be able to address that with you.
yeah, I've said this to you. We've said it to Phil. We're putting an incredible amount of faith and trust and money into you and into Colliers, and you're our guys on this. We view you as our guys. We don't want to be in the situation that we were again, and so there's going to be a whole lot more that we're going to push back on every step of the way to make damn sure that these dates are met and that we're not in the situation that we were in last year. I'm sorry, that we're in this year. So.
All right.
Okay.
I think- So I think we all understand we need to meet the deadlines. We need to get the bids together. We need to start construction. And we'll all get together again for the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Groundbreaking
pay-
before that.
Groundbreaking before that.
Do we get Chris's own shovel that he can take with him to the Cape?
No, because he's not here. If you're not here, you don't get a shovel.
Wow, that's tough.
That's
Yeah, I'm
tough.
tough. The next item is Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, guys.
update.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. The next item is the Board of Selectmen updates. And taking a look at the upcoming agendas. So, you know, we should add the item to discuss the process for selection of committee members
Yeah,
the Board of Selectmen,
on January 5th.
yeah,
And Robin,
size committee.
yeah. I also want to add a motion on that item to remove all the members that we have currently selected from the committee, and
Well, I think,
and have a discussion regarding that.
all right.
That would be what, is it an item, an agenda item?
Yeah,
I
that
think
would be
it
an
falls under
agenda
the
item.
topic. So
I'm sorry, Robin.
I think it just falls under that discussion topic, process topic.
I'll be happy. I'll be happy
I'll
to
defer, I'll
submit the
defer,
motion.
yeah, I'll defer to Chris or Carl at that time to ensure that we do it correctly.
Yeah, I'm having ongoing conversations with town council, and I think that will be a recommendation. I obviously don't know, but I think we should at least have it as an agenda item to review specifically process that as outlined by bylaws, and also to address address any of the procedural missteps that were made, but first and foremost to remove all of the delegates or all of the people who we've appointed, or to dismiss the people that we've appointed currently. So we have 6 members that were appointed specifically right now.
So I think we should discuss with council the best way to make that an agenda item, and then we'll communicate to Mona so that the agenda properly reflects what we need to do. And then Mona, I had forgot to mention to you, there is a conflict for a meeting in March that we need to reschedule the meeting from Thursday to maybe Wednesday. I think it's the 4th meeting in March. Was that right, Chris? There was a conflict?
Yeah, I think the meeting in the latter half of March, yeah, we
Right.
need to adjust it.
Right.
Okay,
So I'll coordinate with you tomorrow.
okay.
But those are the only things on my agenda for updates. So Bob,
No, I gave mine with earlier this evening, talking about the meetings that we had with Phil and Ford to go over the 17 items, etc.
okay. And then, I'm assuming every meeting, you'll just give us a quick update on the progress that's made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, really, you come back, I was going to say it a third time, it's tight.
Yeah,
There's
I
really
know.
no room for slippage.
Right.
So we have to be on top of it, the whole way through.
Right.
And
John,
again, everybody's committed.
Right.
John, do you have any updates?
On I'm sorry, Robin, I was looking ahead at the agenda items, and just with regards to open space, we had a very lively, very productive meeting regarding Hale, the numerous events that Hale has had, the Hale study, the revitalizing the Hale task force. Many members of the committee, as we have discussed, Bob mentioned, we really want to make sure there is Dover-centric and Dover focus on this. I've had lots of communication with Dover residents about Hale and about the opportunity for Hale. I have been very closely following the Newton proposal by the landowner in Newton to offer the space as open space to the town of Newton, and to see how that is moving through its process. So it's quite an example, and it certainly gives us an eye-opening estimate of what the value of Hale is worth to the town of Dover.
So John, what do people you speak to? What's their reaction? What kind of questions do they ask?
the reaction, Bob, is unanimous. There, every in the two cocktails that we've had with regards to hail, it's overwhelming the response that we get because these are people who've shown an interest and historically have been following the process since the very beginning, right? So you're in many of these, it's probably the same as the Carol. You're really preaching to the choir,
Right.
you know, to these in these coffees and these cocktail, and they really are just asking, how do we help? What can we do?
Well, you always have to start off with a good foundational base of people and
Exactly.
supporters.
Yeah, exactly. I will say one other thing that John Sullivan from Conservation and I on Thursday of last week walked the town-owned land with regards to the land that abuts 129 Dedham Street and the town-owned land and the trail access that had been closed by the property owner to try to find a route that was on town land. I will say John Sullivan has put a tremendous amount of time and effort into 2 new trails that meet back into Nonet on town land, and we walked them on Thursday. He's done a really, really nice job at trying to figure out a very good way to address that, to maintain the access, maintain the trails, keep everybody happy, which it's impossible to do, but that has taken steps in the right direction. And I just want to thank him publicly for all the work he's done on it.
Thank you, John. John and John.
So now we're going to ask Chris to earn his keep again.
Right. So now we know this is the town administrator and not me. He can't put this back in my court. So it's the town administrator updates.
All right, a couple of transition items that I want to share with you as updates. First is we've reached out to 3 executive recruitment firms to assist the town with searching for a permanent town administrator replacement. 2 of those firms have gotten back to me to confirm their interest in coming before the board and having a conversation. So we're looking at the 28th and 29th. We'll make sure that those are on your calendars. But the first is Community Paradigm, Bernie Lynch, who the board knows. And the second is Mike Gillette, who works with GovHR as a former town administrator himself. So that'll be good. We'll get that on the schedule and they'll come before you to talk about their methodology and scope of work and how they can be of assistance.
Right. And that just reminds me that we should probably also dust off the package we put together for the town administrator search committee and how we went about, because we have to dovetail that with also the hiring of the search firm. So I'll go back through my files and see what I find, and also ask Felicia, because she was part of that committee, if she has anything in her files that we should probably bring to the committee on January 5th, just to go over again.
Okay.
Because I think we spent a lot of time figuring out what the committee should look like and who the stakeholders should be. And it worked really well. So why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, great.
Maybe we could get all the people just to re-up them.
They're probably already making signs. Once was enough. Look what we got.
Right.
All right, on the HR front, as has been discussed with the board, reached out to a couple of firms to help assist with our interim HR support services, just continuing the personnel, the day-to-day personnel matters, as well as assisting with the other recruitments in the community, and to help set up and structure the new HR position role. So I did hear back from a firm that we have done work with in the past, and they have indicated that they can fill that role for us, which is really great and encouraging. So I'm just waiting on a kind of scope of work and scope of services from them, which I'll then present to the board for approval. But it'd be great, hopefully, to get them on board before I leave. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that we have hired a Selectmen's management fellow, a 6-month internship beginning February 1st to help with day-to-day matters around the office, support Carl with special projects. And this structure is a good opportunity for us to kind of, work with candidates and vet them and see if, there's good opportunities for them to continue full-time employment within the organization. So Mona, myself, and Carl Valente have met with this young man who's very eager to start. He has a father who serves in and has been serving for a long time in municipal government, a few towns over. So he's got the interest for it.
Well, I keep joking he's Mona's assistant.
Yes, he will be her suite mate, her roommate over there.
Right.
All right.
She's-
So let's those are the transition items as it relates to projects. As John talked about, Hale and meeting with open space. I've connected Carl and Eric Arnold and Rob Warren just so that they have their contacts and can start that transition. So Carl can continue to support that project from a staff perspective. Carl's also met with Aquarian Water and CDM Smith so that we can transition from a staff perspective, the staff support for those water efforts as well. So the pieces are being put in place, and Carl's calendar is filling up quite a bit. And that is it. Those are the major highlights that I have for you this evening.
Just one, can I ask one question? The water resource study, how's that progressing?
It's good. So the firm, CDM Smith, has broken down their kind of report in certain sections. So they've accomplished a lot of the background informational materials for us that Robin and the committee has reviewed and weighed in on. The point that they're at now is they have a list of recommended actions for the group to consider. So there'll be a meeting on Tuesday for the group to get together to go through those recommendations and really weigh in on what they think are the kind of the best paths for the community. Now, it doesn't mean that those are going to be the paths, but it's to narrow the scope so that, we can really focus on the top 3 things that the community thinks, that the group thinks makes the most sense for the community. So I think things have been going well with that regard. But Robin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything or amend anything I just said.
No, I think it's gone really well, and they've done a really good job. We tried to put together, high level executive summaries, educational pieces, so that we can explain to the community what the what the aquifer is like, how it really gets replenished, how to think about what happens when you have a drought. So all these things are extremely helpful, and it's been, I think it's a really good committee, and we're very fortunate to have Ron Myrick on it because this is his profession. And he asks the right questions, and he makes sure that, we're focusing on the right things.
So Robin, was it right? In my mind, I'm thinking you had said that there may be presentations to the board as early next year. Is that right?
Well, we have that probably is right. We have a meeting next Tuesday, I believe, now on the calendar. So, the committee's has been meeting regularly. CDM Smith is really the ones doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
They also met with, different stakeholders in the town and got feedback from them, which, led to certain assumptions about the study weren't real. The study can only address so many things.
Right,
And there
right.
were other suggestions that came out of it, and maybe at a later date, those are things we should follow up on. But, really what we were trying to define in the strategy is understanding, first of all, what we have today, and how that works. And then in the event that the aquifer is no longer a source of water or isn't an adequate source of water for the town, what potentially would those options be? How much would they cost? It doesn't mean we're going to do any of these things.
Yeah, no. But the whole point was strategic.
Right. It's just understanding, what the capital costs would be and what those options are.
Great. Glad to hear that they're moving along so swiftly.
I mean, Chris, do you think that's really where we've been at? I think there've been some, really good candid conversations. And, as a town, we can see if there's some other steps we want to take right now, if we just want to monitor, how best to move forward. But for me, the most enlightening thing was really getting a better understanding of the aquifer, how it's replenished. And, the way I was thinking of it in my mind was not really how it works.
Well, looking forward to it then. It'd be really interesting.
Right. So, Chris, are you done or?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So then the last item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And that is the approval of 2023 special one-day liquor licenses for January 5th. Approval of common. So how do you pronounce this?
Victular's license.
Victular's licenses for the Dover Deli, Dover Markets, Dunkin' Donuts, Powysset Farm, and the American Legion.
Robin, with regards to the victular's licenses, can we postpone that until our next meeting?
Is there a
There's a
particular-
couple of ongoing issues that that have been brought to our attention that we're in the process of resolving. I don't think there's going to be anything out of the ordinary, but specifically items, parking, noise. There's been a couple of safety items that have been brought to our attention, that signage in a couple of locations that we're looking at addressing. So I think all of them are going to be resolved. It's just a matter of making sure that everybody's on the same page.
Is there any sort of time? Is there a deadline to any of this stuff?
No.
So they need to, the license needs to be in effect in order for them to be able to serve food. And so I'm trying to bring up the license. I don't know when they expire. I'm trying to bring up the packet.
They typically expire on, hang on one second. There's the renewals are done in December, effective in January, and the dates that we sign have been different in the past. Each license we sign on Mona's desk, and the dates vary from year to year. I don't think there's any specific date that we're required to sign by, or they're required to they are required to submit it by, but I don't think there's any specific date that we are required to sign by.
Yeah, but so I just want to make sure that we have time to get them in before their current licenses expire, right?
Mhm.
Do we know when their current licenses expire?
Yep.
All the licenses expire on December 31st.
So then they need to be approved before
Prior to
December.
December
correct.
31st, right?
That's right.
Right.
So I mean, when we meet with the recruiting firms, is that a meeting,
Yes.
board meeting?
It is
That's
a-
that is a published meeting.
So then maybe we need to add this to the agenda, because that meeting's scheduled for the 27th, and I am not aware of any issues regarding these licenses, but if there are some, then we need to make sure they get resolved. We can't put these entities out of business.
Mhm.
So, I
by
mean, it
not
sounds
giving
like,
them licenses.
so it sounds like if we do this on the 27th and the issues are resolved by the 27th, then everything is hunky-dory, right?
Right.
Is that right, John?
Yes, that's correct.
So, all right, then maybe that's the sensible thing to do. Is there a problem with that, Chris?
So no, not particularly, but it'd be good to know what these concerns are. I don't know if they need to be particularly related to the common vic license. And so if they're like health or safety issues, if they need to be directed to the Board of Health, it'd be good to have a conversation about what.
Okay, so why don't we
And
do that?
it can be after this meeting.
Yeah. Why don't we do that offline? And as I said, it's just a matter of, signage, traffic movement, traffic pattern, as it pertains to people coming and going out of some of the establishments, all things that I think are really minor that should be easily addressed. But if they're not, and they're ongoing complaints, cars going in one way that violating the one-way traffic pattern, trucks double parked. There's just sort of ongoing issues that we are in the process of addressing.
Okay, so not health, but maybe safety and operations.
Yeah, so health, safety, I think they're just items of operation that this is the only time that you really get people to focus on this, Bob, when it's been brought to our attention that whether it's traffic patterns or whether it's noise or hours of operation, or just the way cars are parked when they're moving in and out of these places of business, right?
Okay, so as long as we have time that if they're resolved, we can vote.
Right,
to
but I
approve
think
these
to Chris's
licenses.
point, we need to understand what these issues are and who's handling
Yep.
them.
Yeah.
But we don't need to discuss it today. So
Yep.
then I will just move to approve the 2023 special one-day liquor license for January 5th.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Okay. And that is the last item on our agenda. So I wish all the residents of Dover happy holidays. We have both Hanukkah and Christmas coming up before our next meeting. I hope you enjoy your time with your families, and I have a lot of work in front of me to prepare. But with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Well, first, I'm going to second that. I'm going to second that statement so that it's the board, and happy holidays to all. Go ahead. I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And happy holidays to all.
Happy holidays.
I'll see
Good night,
you on
everyone.
Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.
Chris.